Our next speaker will talk about learning by doing. Dr. Sarah Barnes is an internationally recognised researcher, strategic designer and creative director with a 2-decade career forging new programming and investment frameworks to support citizen-focused digital culture and creativity. Sarah is co-founder of experiential arts and media practice Esem projects, founder of Storybox.co and author of Platform Urbanism, published by Palgrave in 2020. Over to you, Sarah.
Hi everyone, my name is Sarah Barnes. I'm Director of Esem Projects and I'm here specifically to talk to you today about Storybox. Before I begin, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands on which we are all gathered around the country to pay my respects, to recognise their continuing connection to land, water and culture, and to pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. So thank you for the opportunity for me to talk to you about Storybox today. What is Storybox? Well, it is essentially a collaborative digital canvas for shared storytelling and creativity in public places and precincts. We do know that there's lots of different Storyboxes out there. There's a Storybox library, in fact, but our Storybox is really quite physically, quite actually a digital cube that sits outdoors and encourages people to share stories and their own creativity. Storybox has been a labour of love for Esem projects for some time. We've actually been developing and delivering versions of Storyboxes for some 10 years or more. We previously have delivered projects that allow communities and collections to come together to share their stories about their connection to places in different and often unusual environments. So the image that you see here was a project that we delivered down at the Cutaway in Barangaroo in 2015. We like to think of it as our first Storybox project in the sense that it allowed people to explore inside a shipping container lots of the different lives of that quite remarkable location. But Storybox is really the new manifestation of that idea that brings, I guess, this kinds of storytelling that we do with communities and collections into public spaces using a specific structure that we call Storybox. It's a 2 by 2 meter squared box. This particular version that you can see here has LED panels on 2 sides. We also have clean energy solar panels on the other sides and the roof to support some of the energy requirements of the LED screens. Now, we launched Storybox first in Parramatta Square in October 2020. And so I'm going to talk today specifically about that project and what its impacts and the opportunities that have arisen out of the program. I should say that we have continued to develop new programs since then, but I'm talking specifically about our Parramatta program today. Here's a bit of a video to give you a sense of what Storybox feels like. So I hope that gave you a bit of a sense of what Storybox is feeling like and the kinds of content that we show on Storybox itself. I should say that that was a particular curated version of the community stories that have been shared on the Storybox Parramatta and Darling Square programs. We also feature a lot of digital archives as well as digital artworks and digital animations as well. But obviously storytelling and inviting people to share their own stories of connection to people and place is very much at the heart of what we're doing. So why are we doing Storybox? Really, we're interested in, I guess, questioning the way that digital media is occupying our spaces, our everyday spaces today. You may have noticed that increasingly outdoor media has become much more digitized. So we've moved from kind of boring signs, if you like, of advertisements to now much more kind of snazzy digital signage. Storybox is questioning approach and saying, if we've got digital screens in our environments everywhere, why are they only being used to sell advertisements? Can't we do better than that? So we think it's time that we really think about outdoor media as public space media and encouraging people to think about how that public space media can reflect the values of public spaces. So a lot of our work is really about championing the civic and championing the civic values of public spaces. We also celebrate people and planet, so we really promote resilient and sustainable communities in everything that we do. And we also, of course, love creativity and innovation, but also particularly at that kind of community and everyday level. How does Storybox use digital? Well, Storybox is very much born digital, as you can imagine. We're really about connecting the digital and the physical environments in new ways. This goes by lots of different names. It's a kind of emerging field. Some people call it digital placemaking. Some people might call it experiential media, hybrid media, cross media. There's all kinds of genres here. But really it's about using digital to connect with new audiences in unusual spaces. So we can connect with audiences that may not necessarily visit a library or come to a museum or think of themselves as someone who might participate in a local creative program, for example. So we're really interested in using that asset of being outdoors and connecting to a whole lot of different demographics and using that to create a sense of inclusivity where we can. We're also really interested in using digital to curate content ecosystems. So Storybox Parramatta launched in October last year with an anchor partner, the ABC. We were supported also by the City of Parramatta, Western Sydney University, as well as local creative organisations, Curious Works and Form Dance Projects. Really important to the Storybox philosophy is the importance of these content partnerships. We're really conscious, particularly as people who create and work with communities in lots of different locations around the country. We're really conscious that so often fantastic projects get made, really deep dives into different communities, but they kind of get lost in the ether, if you like, after a little while. We love the idea of being able to actually curate and bring a whole lot of different storytelling and creative resources to a place and just resurface those. So digital archives are really important to that. The Storybox Parramatta project resurfaced a number of ABC archives that told the story of migrant communities settling in Parramatta and making that place their home. Being able to showcase that work in those scenes in Parramatta outdoors and to experience the reaction of people who saw their mothers or themselves when they were young, just to create that kind of sense of a look back in time was really, just so moving for us. So as I've said, these partnerships are really critical to what we're doing. It's so important to have these partners on board as much as it is to actually be able to access these kinds of locations, like the location that we're working in Parramatta Square. As I said, how do we use digital? We're using digital to actually curate lots of different digital works, digital stories and perspectives in place. So we can work across institutions to do that. And that's something that's really exciting, I think, as a use of digital, to be able to think differently about the kinds of partnerships that we can establish. And this is just a bit of a quick overview of some of the different kinds of approaches that we take to programming. We also like to use digital to surface and curate unusual data for better public spaces. So we use something called a mood ring here. We ask people to share how they're feeling today. Share how you're feeling as part of a really quick survey, and we have a kind of this data-generated interactive mood ring that shows on the box. It's just a simple way to say we can use data in lots of different ways, and inviting people to be part of that ecosystem in a way that is, of course, anonymized and privacy preserving. We don't take any data whatsoever other than that question itself. Answers to that question. So the Parramatta pilot itself was launched last year in October 2020, as I mentioned. The pilot was designed originally for 3 months to run till the end of December of last year. It was extremely successful as an outcome. The City of Parramatta have asked us to continue to run the program this year and into the next year. So we see that as in and of itself a great outcome. In the pilot phase itself, we attracted 198 contributors overall to that program. And of course, that number has only continued to rise this year. Having said that, we have just come out of lockdown. So the last few months, we're not active in Parramatta Square itself. Storybox has surfaced hyperlocal content in place. So as I mentioned, we're really about surfacing that existing content as well as curating and inviting new content. So we've exhibited 148 content items during that time period. We see that as being like incredibly successful for that amount of time. But it showed to us what a kind of appetite there was to use this media in the way that we're proposing. Our partners love the opportunity to use Storybox. So 91 videos were contributed by our partners during that pilot program. And again, they've only continued into this year. Storybox is in a very public location, and that means that we can actually also report quite high engagement metrics as well. So in the 2 months that we had the pedestrian data available, Parramatta Square had 380,000 visitors, which means, you know, the stories that we're sharing here are being seen by many, many people, and we do engage and receive feedback through that kind of high level exposure. This year, we also ran audience surveys about Storybox just to get the sense of how people actually experience this asset when they're walking past it on their way to the train station, which is just nearby, or going to work. So we interviewed 117 people in total. We also interviewed some people for another project in Darling Square. These are the results that we received in total. So we interviewed 200 people in total. And the results are positive. In Parramatta Square, it was actually over 80% of people thought Storybox was better in the area, made the area better than it would have been without it. They loved the content that they saw. People took a little while to realise that it wasn't advertising, that this was actually like a community asset that they could share. So we know that we've got more work to do to encourage people to know that this is a collaborative digital canvas that they can contribute to. You know, people weren't always so clear who actually made the content, I guess, because that hasn't been really critical to our ethos as such. But certainly there's huge amount of interest in from the community and from our audiences in seeing many more creative and community content assets like this outdoors. So how does this reflect our own digital transformation journey? We definitely love being outdoors and being able to work with communities in this way, but I should say that everyday participation and participatory forums still matter. So the work that we've done to actually meet with people, to connect in person, to do that work of storytelling through workshops and invited proposals, they really do still matter. And I think that's always a journey or a lesson for us, that the IRL, the in real life, certainly matters, but so too do the exciting opportunities to publish in new ways. So some of the reflections on the lessons learned. I always say that digital is certainly not an end, it's a means, and that it's important, and we always need to be reminded that it's important to be driven by your ethics of engagement. The emphasis here, not only on engagement, but on your ethic. So for us, our ethics are about inclusion and everyday creativity. They're about stories and opportunities for connection. So for us, that means that, you know, we're interested in what makes it easy for people to be involved, but also how can we create those kind of relatively simple formats that engage at quite an intimate level, and thinking that, you know, sometimes these simple formats can be as effective as a high-end production. People will say to us, how did you manage to have like that many, you know, content assets, that many contributions over a short period of time? And I guess that for us is about making it easy for people, but also thinking through like what is the intimate moment of connection that we can really encourage here, because that's really what drives us. And also partnerships and alliances are just so critical to this work, and it's something that we believe in very much going forward. In terms of what we would do differently, I think we would, you know, if we had the opportunity, we would like to embed the program in longer term initiatives. We feel as though we're, you know, always precarious. We do short-term pilots, but we do know that engagement, when it has impact, it needs to take place over longer-term periods. So if we knew that we were going to be in Parramatta now, we probably would have designed things differently at the get-go. We would love to be appointing a community curator in residence or a storyteller in residence, just so that people are really aware that there are many different perspectives that are being shown. It's not just all the Storybox team, you know, telling the stories. We want to get that word out. We also really believe that, Storybox is an ethos about engagement outdoors. We have our story box, the 2-meter squared box, but that's kind of not what it's all about. It's not the physical box. It's also about ways that we bring stories out into the streets and into public precincts. So that means that we're kind of exploring now what kinds of different physical kits can be adapted. So here's some of the other assets. You know, this is our first model here, the 2x2 two screens. We're expanding to include the whole wraparound LED, and that's really exciting. And we're getting lots of opportunities to develop programs next year using this model, but also a smaller kind of plinth model, which is really something that can be a bit more flexible and be in different kinds of locations and invite that storytelling opportunity for people in sort of more everyday streets, if you like, rather than the big squares like a big Parramatta Square. There's not too many places like that where I think a Storybox, you know, it's a big piece of infrastructure. So we would like to explore, I suppose, more smaller pieces of acupuncture, if you like, as interventions into the streetscape. We are also developing a mobile device that makes it easier for people to contribute when they see Storybox, because obviously it's that moment when you see something and you may love it, but then when you get home again, you've forgotten about it. So we want to kind of create those journeys as being a bit more seamless, if you like. So that's just a little introduction to the Storybox program. As I said, we're still up and running in Parramatta Square. We've been running programs in Darling Square this year as well, and we're planning new initiatives in 2022. And I'm really grateful again for the opportunity to speak to you all today, and looking forward to our Q&A coming up. Thanks very much.